this investigation published by Stanford Review. And it started off with a Stanford student, which they hid the name, but here they call her Anna. She was conducting sensitive research on China, and then suddenly she started receiving message from someone called Charles Chen. Now, obviously, he's using fake name, clearly, right? But this guy basically started reaching out and asking her, hey, do you want any networking opportunity? Do you want to visit China? I can make sure, I can pay for your plane ticket. I can make sure you have free hotels, free everything there. And she was very suspicious, like, why is he doing it? How did he get his number? Because he even started disclosing some stuff that like he should not have known. So this was not someone that like just some random person from the university. This is someone that's like has access to stuff that he shouldn't have access to. And one thing I forgot to mention, this guy is pretending to be a Stanford student, and soon we'll learn that this guy who's reaching out to Anna is not a Stanford student. Then he also told her, hey, this is how you avoid visa scrutiny by Chinese authorities. And then he asked her to communicate using WeChat. Now, we already know how bad TikTok is. CCP is basically reading everything. Now, WeChat is probably even worse. It's heavily monitored by the CCP. And this relates to this law China has. I think it's called Article 7 or Article 37, where basically any country, any company in China or any citizens, they have to help CCP when it comes to national security. So CCP can say anything that relates to national security. If they ask you to help them out, you have to do it. That means if you're a company operating here in the United States like TikTok is, and CCP is like, hey, we need sensitive information about this citizen in the US, they have to do that. Well, Russia sent, okay, we got a lot of people. I'll start interacting with the chat in just a second. If you haven't hit the like button, be sure to hit it. We have almost 1,000 people, and I want to make sure we get it to more people. Yes, the student visa thing, Candice, we'll talk about that in a second, because this is a very extensive investigation, and a lot of that relates to Chinese students who are coming here on student visas, and then they're basically getting like blackmailed or I guess extorted into helping the CCP. So I want to make clear that a lot of these Chinese students don't want to do it. But imagine the position you would be in if you're getting an opportunity to go to the United States, study at some of the greatest universities in the world, but then the CCP finds that out and they're basically pressuring your family back home. So these Chinese students, a lot of them are not doing this willingly. In fact, a lot of them helped out in this investigation, but they stayed anonymous because they know how bad the backlash could be for them and their families who are back in China. So definitely a lot of the Chinese students are not at fault, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't be scrutinizing the visa process that we have with all the foreign students that are coming in. But again, as soon as, so let's cut back to this guy, Charles Chen. When Charles commented on one of Anna's social media posts, basically Anna was like, I don't know who this guy is. He's bothering me because I'm researching China, right? So she put up the conversation on her social media asking people if anyone knows this. That's when he started commenting saying, you have to delete that post, you have to keep it secret. That's when she really freaked out and she went to the authorities. And that's how this whole thing started like snowballing. According to experts who basically helped Anna, the guy wasn't a Stanford student. In fact, he worked for Ministry of State Security, basically like the Chinese spy agency, and his goal was to find sympathetic Stanford students and gather intelligence from them. So he wanted to find out which students support China, support CCP, and see how he can get them to spy for the CCP. That was his goal, and that's just insane. But the crazy part is this was just the beginning, because after this news, I'm guessing whoever the author is, let me shout out the author real quick before we keep moving forward. Where's the author? Okay, they did not put the name. Is the name in the beginning? Okay, I don't see the author name. Maybe this is because they might be a little OCD about getting some backlash due because CCP has long reach. And that's why we ask you guys to hit the like and subscribe button down below, because it's not just in Stanford. They're doing the same thing here on YouTube where they just downvote and dislike any videos that are critical of the Chinese government. Because China is like a big country, but there are not a lot of YouTube channels covering it. I can remember like 7, 8 channels, that's it. China Uncensored, then Lawai, Serpensa, Inconvenient Truth, Lee's Diary, and David Zhang, and of course our channel, Business Basics. So there are not a lot of channels who are covering this. But let's continue this. So after this, they started researching more and more and how this is all going on. So the way CCP is carrying out is whoever gets accepted to US universities, they get scholarship from the CCP, or I guess companies that are affiliated with the CCP. And on top of that, before these students come to US to study, they are forced to sign a loyalty oath. I wonder if I can find that real quick. Yeah, they're forced to sign a loyalty oath. And on top of that, this is like basically in the US, you know how we go, how we go to get, what is it called, a lease? You know how if you're young, if you're a college student, you need a guarantor on the lease? Well, on this loyalty oath, CCP requires that these students have a guarantor. So basically, if they break or they don't listen to CCP when they're in the US, the person who's signing up as the guarantee person for the students, they face heavy penalties. And on top of that, they have a lot of pressure from the police and everything. So definitely CCP has like, oh, okay, let me check that. Guess what? The Stanford Review is a nonprofit. Yeah, there are a lot of Chinese channels that are definitely great. So let me get back to here. On top of a lot of these Chinese students, many Chinese nationals have handlers. They want CCP to know everything that's going on, and this is very normal. They just relay information they have. And on top of this, CCP actually tells these students, hey, China is lacking in AI. So if you get an opportunity, you have to get on the AI research team. Or let's say China is lacking in, what else can I think of? Quantum computing. So these students have like specific directions on where they need to go. And then on top of that, when they get into these research, they copy everything and send it to China. Now we have a lot of videos we'll watch later in the stream that basically covers how China is stealing from the US, but this is how it all starts. CCP is basically extorting these students. A lot of these students, they are speaking during this investigation like anonymously, and that's because they know it's risky to speak out against CCP publicly. But that doesn't mean like we shouldn't be doing something about this. Like we should have something to make sure this doesn't happen. Especially Stanford. It's one of, like Stanford has some of the smartest people in the country or maybe in the world. So the research they're doing is really like, I couldn't comprehend it. I'm not that smart. So we have to protect our important research. China lacking exporting right now. I assume government pressures this. No, China has the law. Let me see if I can, right here. Okay, so it is called Article 7, and this is the law they have, not just for citizens, even for companies. Any organization or citizens shall support, assist, cooperate with state intelligence work in accordance with the law, and keep the secrets of national intelligence work from becoming known to the public. And that's exactly why, like, a lot of these students, they don't disclose in their visa applications that they're working with the Chinese military. We actually had one of the case of this. Let me see if I can find that. It's somewhere here. Where is that? Military. Oh yeah, in 2020, we had a Chinese student get convicted here in the United States by the DOJ, Department of Justice. And basically, he lied on the visa application. He was affiliated with the Chinese military. That would mean a lot of things, right? He wouldn't have access to a lot of the research. Maybe his visa wouldn't even get approved if we knew he was somehow related to the Chinese military. But they just lie. And this goes back to the Chinese law. Again, in no way am I blaming the students, right? If a government as strong as the CCP is coming after you, you kind of have to do what they say. But what I am saying is we need to improve our security. We need to do better from our side to make sure this doesn't happen. Because a lot of the students, they will hide that the CCP has approached them. CCP has given them instructions on what research they need to do, what they need to do at Stanford. So we cannot expect these students to be completely truthful in their applications and everything. But we have to make sure that we don't let this continue. Once you start following, that's the thing though, someone's saying once you start following the money, you understand what's happening. But a lot of these students, it's like, they're not even getting paid. It's basically extortion because CCP is like, if you don't help us, your family is gonna have a hard time back in China. Like you guys put yourself in that position. What would you do? If any government, I'm not just saying CCP, any government is putting pressure on your family, on your parents, on your kids, I guess, what would you do? Let me come back. Where were we? So we have another information that someone from Edinburgh University, which is in Ireland, if I'm correct. I think Edinburgh is in Ireland. They said that there are Chinese handlers at that university, basically managing foreign students there. So if that's going on again, that university is pretty well respected, but it's not Stanford. If that's happening in that university, you can assume it's happening in Stanford. And a lot of these people are speaking anonymously because it's scary. And this is what these handlers look out for who are on campus. They look out for if other Chinese students are criticizing the CCP. They look out for if they are speaking favorably to Dalai Lama. And they see if anyone's against the party in China. And if that happens, their family could get in trouble. Now, how does CCP keep up with what's going on campus? Well, other students are basically spying on other students. And someone made a good point in this investigation that it doesn't matter if that's actually happening because everyone thinks it's happening, and that means they have to watch out for what they say. They have to watch out for what they do because you cannot trust anyone. You don't know who's working for the CCP. And Stanford has known about this for a while, but they keep delaying investigation because they think the investigation could become racist or racism could come in. Every Chinese student would be blamed for working in. No, that's what I'm saying. So the Edinburgh thing, someone said Edinburgh is in Ireland. Someone from that university said that they know for sure there are CCP handlers on that university. Now, I'm not saying Edinburgh University is not a bad university, but it's not Stanford University. So if CCP has people working there in Ireland, they most definitely have spies working here. So according to this, 15% of Chinese students get the scholarship from the CCP program, which is called CSSC something. I don't know the exact acronym, but we'll find it here in the thing. So again, that doesn't mean all the 15% who are getting scholarship from the CCP are involved, but you can assume some portion of that would be involved. And Waba, I don't know what that name is, but what are they spying on? But think about it. What is Stanford doing? They are researching a lot of stuff. That's the future, right? AI, a lot of the AI research is going on in Stanford. Oh, it's in Scotland. My bad. Edinburgh is not in Ireland. It's in Scotland. That's my bad. But coming back to Stanford, a lot of the research, like the forefront research, is going on in all these universities, right? AI going on at universities, probably quantum computing. I don't even know because, again, like I said, not Stanford smart at all. So I don't even know what it's working on, but it's clearly important, especially when CCP is spending that much money. Actually, let's talk about the money because we have it somewhere here. Where is the money? It was like $64 million a year just focusing on Stanford or something. Let me see if I can find it. Yeah, $64 million in Chinese funding, and yeah, it is insane. Clearly, CCP cares a lot about China, and another problem we have is a lot of the donations come to these universities anonymously, or I guess we don't know who's donating it, but those donations definitely affect the policy because later on in the article, we talk about how a lot of the investigation committees are shut down, citing that, it's going to give rise to racism against all students. But again, just because you're investigating spies doesn't mean you're racist, right? There's very good reasons to investigate spies, and there are ways to do it without being racist. So it's just stupid that we're not investigating it just because we're worried about being racist, because national security is at risk. Donald Ely said, I was going to study bridge building at Stanford, but I was never accepted. I think we have read a lot of this, but yeah, definitely a big, I'll link this if anyone wants to read it actually real quick. It was definitely a very important investigation, and I think needs to be talked about a lot more than it's being talked about right now. Yeah, exactly. This is national security. So this is where it's, see, these people know, the people who are opposing investigations, they're not really worried about racism, but they know if they yell racism, the investigation committee will be put on pause. And this is where we have to look at how the donations are coming into the universities, because a lot of money is coming from Chinese billionaires, Chinese oligarchs. So these people are basically trying to hide that there's a spy ring going on at Stanford. They're not really worried about racism or anything else. They just don't want it to stop. And again, as someone said in the chat a little bit before this, like, it's national security, right? We just need to follow the money, and we realize that these people are not really protecting the US national security. They're just worried about their money, how their donations are coming in. Again, I'm not trying to be disrespectful to Edinburgh University. It's a very prestigious university, but it's not Stanford. There was a law made in CCP. Yeah, we looked at it, Boston. The law that CCP created was the Article 7. I think it's right here. Article 7, where is Article 7? Yeah, so this is the law. Basically, any company and any citizens, they have to help with national intelligence work. And on top of that, they cannot tell other people that they're helping. So that means when these people like apply for visas or anything like that, even if they're being forced to help the CCP, they cannot disclose it because, again, against the Chinese law. So they would just face punishment for that. And on top of that, family members. So even if you're in the United States, the family members get worrisome. And actually, we covered this a while ago. I want to play a clip for you guys. One Chinese student tweeted something disrespectful about the CCP, and the cops showed up at her house, at her parents' house back in China. That's how much they're following Twitter and YouTube and everything like that. This is why we got almost 1,500 people, but we only have 500 likes. So before we watch this video about this story, let's make sure we can get that like to at least 1,000. So if you haven't hit the like button, be sure to hit it now. And right above my head is the subscriber counter. Let's see if we can get to 73,000, because we are at 72,800. So if you haven't subscribed, be sure to subscribe. Let's watch this video. It is an insane story.
January 2019. 23-year-old Jennifer Chen is traveling back home to China to celebrate Lunar New Year's with her parents. She had just sat down with her family to enjoy a New Year's meal when she heard a knock on the door. It was the police. They had come to arrest Jennifer. There seems to be some back and forth between the authorities and Jennifer, but in the end, they arrested and took her to the police station. The whole family was shocked. Why would the government want to arrest Jennifer? She's a bright young student who just finished her undergrad in Europe. She's just coming back to China to spend some time with her parents before going back for grad school. Her family had no clue, but what Jennifer had done was considered a treasonous sin by the government. She had liked a tweet on Twitter that criticized the CCP.
That means if we ever go to China, if this is treason, we're going to be hanged on the first day.
Whether it was done by accident or on purpose, it didn't matter to the authorities. It was enough for her to be arrested and questioned. Eventually, they forced her to delete the Twitter account if she wanted to return home. But the government didn't stop there. They continue to track Jennifer's internet usage even.
You know what's insane? This video is almost 2 years old, but it's still going on. So you guys know how CCP is taking over Hong Kong, basically. There's no one country, two system. Hong Kong is now basically the same as mainland China. There's no free speech. But if you're a Hong Kong resident or citizen who's overseas, and if you criticize the CCP, your family, and even in Hong Kong, can face the same restrictions, the same harassment, I guess. Not restriction, that's not the right word. And I don't know if you guys know about the Hong Kong billionaire. He's a magazine billionaire who's very vocal about Hong Kong being independent. He doesn't want Hong Kong to be taken over by the CCP. Well, he's arrested, and now he's in a solitary confinement because CCP didn't like what he was saying. That's the freedom of speech you have in Hong Kong now.
Even after she went back.
Oh, wow, 2,000 people. So everyone who's joining in, we're talking about this crazy big investigation that just got released by the Stanford Review. And CCP has a lot of spies in Stanford and probably other universities around US. But we'll get back to that. If you haven't hit the like button, be sure to hit it. We're trying to get the likes to 1,000. So we're at 700 right now. Let's get it to 1,000. And yeah, like Donald Ely said, Jimmy Lai, his newspaper was shut down too.
Back to Europe, and authorities regularly call her mom and ask her if she's visited any human rights websites. This isn't some unique, singular story from China. There's countless amounts of evidence about CCP tracking their citizens and punishing them if they ever get out of line. There's a terrifying video of Chinese cops interrogating a Chinese student who was living in Australia. They had arrested his father.
Oh yeah, I'll find this video because they arrested his father. They brought him to the. So this student is not in the U.S. Not in China. He's I think in the U.K. or U.S. But he tweeted something that was critical of the CCP. So the cops arrested his father in China, brought him to the police station, and had him call the son so they could reprimand him, basically warn him.
And called him using his father's phone and were pushing him to delete his Twitter account.
什么？推特？
这个推特号是不是你的？
我就是没有听说过这个号，从来没听说过。
今天我找你父亲过来的，我们跟你父亲平时也保持沟通，你可以对我跟你通话这个过程进行录音录像，没问题，好吧？但是我明天我就告诉你一声，我在找你父亲，啊，好吧？你可以录音录像，我明天告诉你。
哎。
而且你现在我跟你讲，你那个推特发的那些东西是绝对不可以的。
The CCP has been perfecting its art of cyber warfare for a while now. That's why any video criticizing the communist regime is quickly downvoted by CCP bots.
But yeah, so anyone who's just joining it, I know we got a lot of new users, so let me just quickly recap this Stanford review. Any student at Stanford who's researching about China, CCP has handlers in California, and they can basically, they reach out to you, they offer you money. If you don't take the money, they try to intimidate you, and they try to extort you to just get more information for China. So if you're researching China, they want to make sure you don't say anything critical. But if you're researching, let's say, important things like AI, quantum research, whatever important thing is, I don't know what those are, what's happening at Stanford, but they try to get that research somehow, some way, either through money or through intimidation. On top of that, roughly 15% of Chinese students, there are around 1,200 Chinese students at Stanford, and roughly 15% of Chinese students all across the US receive scholarship from like some CCP-related organization. And CCP uses this scholarship to basically control these students. So before they come to the US, if they're accepted to a US university, before they come here, CCP has them sign a loyalty oath. Let me show you. And this is like insane, right? And on top of it, it's not really a loyalty oath that you can just sign and ignore. It has punishments if you break it. Now, whenever you sign a loyalty oath, if you're coming to the US, you need a guarantor. Like how in the US, we need a guarantor if you're getting a lease. At least I had to do that when I was in college and I was getting a lease. So usually a guarantor is a family member. That means if you don't listen to the CCP while you're in the US, the person who signed as your guarantor will face financial penalties or even arrest. So what is CCP asking you when you're here? Well, they tell you exactly what they need. So CCP is like, hey, in China, we are lacking the AI technology. That means when you go to Stanford, you need to focus to get on the research team that's researching AI, or you need to get on a research team that's researching aerodynamics or whatever. So CCP has a list of stuff that they want to achieve, and they push these students to get on those research teams. Now, I want to be clear. Vast majority of these students don't want to do it, but they have no choice. Think about it. If your family is back in China, and this is the law CCP recently passed. Where is this law? Let me pull this up again. Yeah, this is the law, Article 7. Any company or citizen has to support, assist, cooperate with state intelligence work. And on top of that, they have to keep it a secret. Now, luckily, we already know this is going on because we had a case in 2020 where a student named, what's his name? Song. His name was Ju Song or Chen Song. He was arrested he got on a military research team, and he was sending all this straight to China. So he was making copies of all the research that was happening, and he was sending it to China. Luckily, he was arrested, charged, and everything. But there are more of these cases that are happening in Stanford. But there's no investigation going into them because Stanford receives a lot of money from this anonymous donor. And when I say anonymous, Stanford doesn't want to make public who's donating money to the university, but you can assume that some of these donors are Chinese billionaires, Chinese oligarchs who have strong ties to the CCP. So whenever there's any talk about investigating or basically reeling in the CCP spy network at Stanford, what happens is these organizations that are receiving money from the CCP, they claim racism. They basically say, hey, you cannot investigate people just because they're Chinese, when in reality, no one's trying to do that. We're trying to investigate to see if they're working for the CCP, and we have proof that that has been happening at Stanford, and it's still going on. But they use the racism shield to basically not have any investigation, even though this relates to national security, because Stanford is one of, MIT and Stanford, in my opinion at least, is like two of the best universities in the world. And the research that's going on there is likely heavily like important to our future. And China just wants access to that research, even though it could be national security related. It could be something that, like, what if the US government wants to make sure no one else has access to that? But no one wants to investigate it because these organizations just claim like it's racism. In fact, they have one example here where Asian American Scholar, which is the organization that's trying to like stop the investigation happening, they use the same wording as China Daily. And for those of you who don't know, China Daily is basically like the state media from China. So they're controlled by the CCP. They don't have independent media in China. Like, they don't have any private companies in China. Everything is controlled by the CCP according to the law. And they use the same line. So here we have some line that they highlighted. And what is this organization? Asian American Scholars Forum. They use the same line as China Daily because, again, the goal is not to prevent racism. They just don't want investigation happening because if you follow the money, they're getting money from these billionaires who are affiliated with CCP. Hey, Kaylin, I'm back. We got almost 2,000 people. Okay, guys, we are just 100 likes away from 1,000 likes. So if you haven't hit the like button, be sure to do it down below. But again, we'll come back to this investigation because clearly Congress needs to see this. So if you haven't read this investigation, I highly recommend you read it and you tweet to whoever your representative is, because this is not something that's like a university issue. This is a national security issue, and it should be talked about in our government. Yeah, again, a lot of these students are on student visa, so they are, from China, but a lot of these students are not at fault, because I want you guys to put yourself in their position. Imagine you get an opportunity to go at some of the most respected universities in the world, okay? And that's huge already. But then CCP comes and they're basically extorting you to work for them. And you cannot do anything because you're from China. According to the law, you have to help the CCP. If you don't, you're going to jail. But on top of that, once you're here in the United States, your family is still there. So if you don't help them, your parents could face like kind of risk that I can't even imagine. Your kids, if you have kids, they could have problems back there. So it's definitely like the students are not at fault, I would say.